I was asked a question yesterday. A friend of mine said, "Oh, you're the smartest person I know." I went, "Oh dear." Young friend. I know her boyfriend very, very well. And she said, my father passed away. He was terminally ill with cancer. And I find the experience has driven me into hedonism. And I presume she meant like a sort of a nihilistic hedonism, where you just think, I've only got so long to live on the planet. I may as well just consume as much as I can and enjoy as much as I can before I too slide off into meaningless oblivion in the same way. He died younger than was expected. And she said, "What do I do with this?" And I said, "Well, I have had people die young in my life of cancer and other causes. I'm also planning on dying one day, not imminently, but it's an objective. It's probably going to happen. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. I'm fairly sure." And I said to her, "Well, you have to have something approximating almost like a religious or spiritual framework to understand these things." But I said to her, "I understand if you don't like religion." She said, "I don't. I was raised religious." She's Russian. She was raised in a religious way and she really doesn't like religion. I said, "Okay, but you have to try and answer some of the questions that religion and philosophy tries to answer in order to live and in order to make sense of this. You have to have some kind of a philosophy in order to make sense of this life and to make meaning of the pain that you're going to experience and the suffering you're going to experience. Life giveth and life taketh the F away. Things will be stripped from you and you will be humiliated and it will hurt. And the longer you're alive, the greater risk you are at of being hurt, of being traumatized, of experiencing trauma. We have to have a philosophy of meaning," I said to her. She said, "Okay, I'm not doing religion." I said, "Fine." She said, "I don't believe in the afterlife." I said, "That's okay. I think that when people see a light and they have spiritual experiences, how do I know it's not hallucination and chemical reactions in the brain?" And I think she thought I was going to argue with her. And I said, You don't know that. There's, you have people who say, "Oh, we have the testimony of somebody who died and then they came back to life." And I was thinking about this just 2 days ago because I've accepted that my whole life. When I started laughing, I was driving. And I was like, wow, why did we always just accept that? Well, sorry, not we. Like, why have I and many other people, who knows, maybe you didn't always accept it, just accepted it? Like, oh yeah, here's John from New Hampshire. Yeah, he died on the operating table 3 times. And he's here to tell us today about his experience. And he's like, "Hi, I'm John from New Hampshire, and I saw my grandpappy and his grandpappy's grandpappy, and they were around a fire." Hang on a second. Back up a second. Did you say he was dead? Yep. Did you say he was dead 3 times? Yep. He was triple dead. Yep. And he came back to life. Yep. Have you considered the possibility that John from New Hampshire was never dead? Like, how is he dead? How are you dead and then come back to life? That's not a thing unless you are the Christ King, the Messiah of the Jews, the Savior of the Jews of ancient Galilee. Nobody dies and comes back to life. And then I started to think, I got picky. I was like, well, how are they saying that then? And I was like, it's data, isn't it? It's a scientific statement. This patient is dead. Okay, how are you measuring their death? How are you measuring that they be dead? They clearly aren't dead if they come back to life. It made me laugh. I was like, I've always accepted this, but you're not dead and come back to life. You might show your heartbeat may have stopped and your brain activity according to that sensor may show that there's no brain activity there, but you don't die and come back to life. That's not true. So anyway, I said to this girl, I'm not going to argue with you. It could just be it probably is just a chemical reaction in the brain and a hallucination. That's the most likely explanation. If you apply Occam's razor, that's probably what it is. And she went, oh, I judoed her. I used Aikido. She thought there would be resistance. There was not. She thought there would be yang. There was not. There was only yin. I went, no, you're right. It probably isn't anything. And she was like, well, what do I do then? I said, as far as I know, we still have to answer the questions. We still have to try and answer the questions. Maybe what I'm going to tell you now, maybe it's defeatist. Maybe in some subtle, covert way, it's a really pessimistic a nihilistic philosophy. Maybe. But my attitude, my philosophy is this. Humans, and I consider myself to be one largely, may simply have evolved to need spirituality and philosophy. Humans may have evolved to need spirituality, philosophy, narrative, myth, and meaning in the way that we need water and in the way that we need oxygen. So would you let yourself dehydrate until your pee went brown and your kidneys started to hurt? I hope not. That would be foolish. Like, what for? You need water, so just drink water. That's why I say this could be nihilistic. It could be pessimistic. I'm saying develop a spiritual and a moral philosophy to reduce your anxiety, to reduce your depression, to reduce your despair. That's a really good reason to do it. That's a rock solid. Then you can avoid all the arguments of like, I don't believe this and I don't believe that. And I'm like, but you're miserable. You're miserable. We are miserable without a moral philosophy. And we're full of anxiety and despair. And we're still going to die within 95 years at the outside anyway. So do you want to live a life? I guess I'm sort of saying blue pill in many ways, but I'm not. I'll come to the way I'm not. So on one side of the coin, I'll present this Socratically. I'll present, Socratically and in a sort of a Hegelian way. I'll present two sides, the synthesis and the antithesis. The thesis and the antithesis, and then we'll create a synthesis. So it's nihilistic. Just do it so that you feel less anxious. Take it like you take your medicine and eat your fruit and eat your vegetables and drink your water, even though water's not delicious. Just do it. You feel better. Okay. That works for her. She said, okay, that makes sense to me. And I'm like, you'll feel better. Don't, and living nihilistically in this negative, hedonistic sort of consumer capitalist way is definitely going to make you feel more anxious. It's definitely going to make you feel more despair. I didn't say this, but secretly I was thinking probably because we're not a good evolutionary match. So we're a good evolutionary match for community, for nature worship, for myth, for religion, for gods and goddesses and spiritual explanations. Because that's the animal we are. Like rabbits like certain environments, snakes like certain temperatures, eagles be happy in like a mountain and shiz. I don't know where eagles go, but up, presumably. They're not like in the ground with the ferrets and the voles. And humans, we kind of like religion. So or spirituality. In order to deal with life, you're going to have a spiritual framework to cope. You want to try and answer the questions, the philosophical and spiritual questions. How should I live? What's the purpose of life? What's good? What's bad? What does a good life look like? Why am I here? What's the nature of this reality? The flip side of the coin, that's a cynical, psychological view. Like, be spiritual so that you suffer less while you're here. Which is it's not an awful philosophy. That's not terrible. I'm not ashamed of that. I would fully get behind that and say, yeah, just be spiritual. So, like, you're in the slaughterhouse, you're definitely getting the bolt gun. You can either be really miserable until that moment or really happy until that moment. What do you want? It's not a terrible philosophy, but there's more to it than that. On the other side of it, the way I enter the question is through the door marked mystery, through that which I don't know. And I enter this door in a disciplined way. I don't say, because I don't know for certain what's happening, anything could be happening. That doesn't seem like a reasonable way to proceed. But I don't know what is happening. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I keep breathing. Somewhere between Dostoevsky and Nietzsche and their view of God as a coordinate, God as organizing principle, God as the pinnacle of all things, God as the ultimate meaning of reality, and maybe a more Islamic view, somewhere between the two. So like organizing principle and the Islamic view, which I made no claims to have. I was raised Christian, so unfortunately I was forced to read the books within the Bible and scripture and stuff like that. My experience with Islamic teachings was brief, and it was because of living in Malaysia. I write about it in the book Cult of One. And it was a broad and very non-dogmatic Sufi approach. And it was essentially God is all it is, and that you cannot divide God from God. And you exist at the behest of God. You exist at the will of God. Or, in other words, you and I exist, and reality continues existing at the behest of a force that we do not know and that we do not control. For sure, it's not me. I'm not keeping the world going, and I'm not keeping myself going. Do I have the right to demand that my arms and legs don't fall off? Maybe, but why? Why don't I dissolve? Why don't I dissolve? Why don't I simply cease to be? So at the more Islamic end of the spectrum, all the Abrahamic religions have this, but in Islam it's focused on more. I only exist at the will of a higher order being, and everything that exists at the will of this indivisible higher order being, or root cause. I am not summoning myself into being, something else is summoning me into being. So there's mystery there. So I go, aha, I have a foothold onto something that looks like a religious belief or a religious premise. What else do I have? Well, I read around, I studied a little bit of Islam. I studied Christian mysticism. I studied Gnosticism. That's pretty wild. The Gnostics believe that this is an evil world, an evil, corrupted world made either by a not real god, a fake god called a demiurge, who might be called the Elderboth, who might be part lion, part snake. There's not one Gnosticism, there's multiple Gnosticisms. But basically, this is a bad world created by a bad god, and that we're here by mistake, and that there is a good god that exists in a good world that is above and beyond this place called the firmament, and that we can attain to that place through gnosis, which is knowing. That's pretty wild. Buddhism and the Vedic scriptures around suffering and trauma. Buddhism puts suffering at the center of consciousness, at the center of self-awareness, which is pretty smart. Like Buddhism and some of the Vedic texts are pretty literate, scientifically speaking, in terms of neurobiology, in terms of systems thinking, in terms of mathematics. It's actually, Buddhism isn't really a religion because there's no faith there. Because you start with very, very simple precepts like all awareness of life starts with suffering, with lack, with craving. Okay, I'm not aware, I'm asleep until I'm hungry or I'm too cold or whatever. That makes sense. The cause of that suffering is lack and the craving for a different state. Oh, okay. Okay. There is a route to end that suffering, and that is to detach from the desire to change states, to accept things as they are. And then the fourth noble truth is the route to end that attachment, to changing your state, is through a certain discipline. All of these religions offer discipline, by the way. They offer a way of living life that is ritualistic, that is disciplined, that is conscious, and that is frankly a bit of a pain in the bum. Because they don't want you just slobbing around doing what you would naturally and spontaneously do. Because they realize that led people, humans, downward. That is nihilistic consumerist hedonism. It's just slobbing around doing whatever you want to do. It makes you miserable. We figured this out probably 15,000 to 20,000 years ago, whenever we started to impose discipline on ourselves and impose discipline on communities. It was to stop people from entering into degenerative and depraved states and to prevent suffering. It was a wall against suffering. And then we have the really weird stuff that I've experienced and thought about, which I experienced when I was younger and I used to take acid. And I would have visions of the Garden of Eden and how this was the story of the evolution of man inside of a world. That it's actually a Gnostic story run by a god that wants to prevent the full evolution of the animal that we were before we were this animal into something that could defy God or the gods themselves. So you have the tree of knowledge, and then you have the tree of eternal life. One of them we got close to, the other one we never got close to at all. The one that we got close to was traumatic and traumatizing. When we became aware, that was the beginning of our suffering. Before that, we were asleep. We were unconscious. We knew not what we were. We were completely innocent. When I had these visions, when I would take acid, the creature I could speak to me through time as the creature I used to be in an ancient time. And it sort of looked like a dog fox thing. So Adam and Eve were not, like in the pictures you see them as like naked white Europeans with fig leaves on. But in this vision, they were just completely naked. They were just animals covered in fur. Like your cat, like your dog. And I'm not saying this is real. I'm just saying it's something I saw when I took a psychedelic drug. You see stuff when you take psychedelic drugs. But it was interesting to me. And I think with all that there, and other people's visions and other people's psychedelic visions, I for sure don't know what this is. I know that suffering is bad. I know that trauma is bad. There is a line in the book 1984 by George Orwell. Do not be afraid to read that book. It is a short novel. You can get through it in an afternoon. It's cleanly written. It's brilliantly written. George Orwell writes a line in that book that I, for sure, as an aspiring writer, would not have the backbone to write. And it's something like a chapter that starts, it's not a plot spoiler, everybody knows roughly what happened in 1984. It's a beautiful romantic comedy where everything works out very, very well and it's very amusing. Winston came to realize quickly that there was nothing worse in the world than pain. This is the story of a young, idealistic dissident who decides to rebel against a totalitarian state, knowing that he will be punished for it, knowing he'll be interrogated and tortured and made to suffer. But in his youthful idealism, torture is like an honorable, valiant, idealistic, utopian sacrifice. And then when he's going through the drudgery of it and the suffering of it, he really went like this beautiful line. It's so deadpan. George Orwell, it's like just writes this deadpan line. Winston came to realize there's nothing worse in this world than pain. And he has his awakening too late because he already can't escape. He's already caught in the cogs of the machine when he has that awakening. So is trauma evil? Is trauma evil? Is the essence of evil something to do with the pain that causes awakening? So in the Matrix, when, I always forget his name, the actor Larry Fishburne awakens Keanu Reeves, who's Neo. What's Larry Fishburne's character's name? He's not called Oedipus. What's his name? I can't remember his name. Morpheus, the bringer of change. Is that evil? That's a Gnostic story, by the way, the Matrix. Has he done it? Has he introduced evil into that character's life? That character wakes up into hell. Think about it. He's living a normal, sort of lower middle class, or potentially upward mobile life as a 20-year-old office worker. And he awakens into the most god-awful, despair-inducing hellscape. That's one hero offering an awakening to another hero. And it is a nightmare. It is the worst nightmare imaginable. There is no nightmare worse that you could think of. And he's supposed to be grateful for his awakening. Is that evil? Evil. Other people have said this. I think it's an interesting linguistic coincidence. Evil backwards is live. Devil backwards is lived. It's experienced. When they were in the Garden of Good and Evil, when they were in the Garden of Eden. When they were in the Garden of Eden. Oh, what did they come to know? They came I'm not supposed to swear. They came to know knowledge. How do you know knowledge? By being alive, by growing up. You're born an animal. Babies are little animals. Toddlers are ferocious little animals if you hang around with them. That's a human in a caveman state, cavewoman state, running around, peeing themselves, screaming at the sky, hitting each other with sticks. They yell in victory over nothing, just to hear the sound of their own roar, to feel it in their lungs, to feel it in their bodies, to hear it in their own ears. And they're intoxicated with the power that they have when they do that. Little thugs, little pirates, Vikings, fantastic. It makes my head hurt, and I have to lie down in a quiet, dark room afterwards and weep silently for a while. The kids, they're great at a distance. Other people's kids, away from me. But sometimes when I'm playing with my sister's boys, my nephews, I look at them like that and I think, wow, the unbridled, unboundary thuggery that is taking place in this room right now. I was going through old video clips today on my phone, and I just have a video clip of my nephew pretending to punch me in the face. He's not doing it hard, and me saying, "Stop it, my dear boy, stop that immediately." And he's just going, eh, eh, eh. And I say, don't you think this is very violent? And he's like, yeah, little thug. And then we grow out of that animal phase and we come to know life and we come to mature, and it's traumatizing. So is that evil? Is being asleep good? Think about how much we love sleep, how much we love to not know what's going on. It's wonderful when you don't know, you can sleep, and that's good. So nobody likes pain, Winston. Obviously, we're all little Winstons and we realize there's nothing worse in this world than pain. Trauma is terrible. Being traumatized is awful. But is it evil? Is it evil? What does it mean to become awakened? What does it mean if you get woken up? Do you like being woken up in the dead of night? No, it's painful. It's traumatizing. In one state, you're asleep and you dream. And in your dream, you can be anything, anywhere. You can do whatever you want, just like the Matrix. You can have whatever dream you like. When you wake up to pain. So is it good? Is it evil? How are we rating those things? That's why I think at some point in everybody's life, it will do you good and make you a stronger, safer person to have a real in-depth conversation with yourself and with other people about the nature of good and the nature of evil. What is good and what is evil? Is it really evil to have lived? Is the creature that knows the base pleasures of the flesh and the material world and has lived in the material world and experienced all it has to offer, is he or she evil? Those who have lived, which is evil backwards, those who have lived, those who know experience, the scarred, the tattooed, the worn, those who have had addictions, those who have overcome addictions, those who have been traumatized by life. Are they evil? Well, they might not be evil, but they're certainly scarier and more intimidating than some priggish little saint who's been raised in a monastery and never stepped outside of the temple grounds, right? You wouldn't be intimidated by somebody like that. But you would be intimidated by those who've lived, because they are awakened. And those who are awakened might see through you. Sometimes, when I'm living my life and I'm going through the world, and I get weird responses from people, because I am of good intent. I'm not always of good cheer, but I am always of good intent. And I notice some people get disproportionately intimidated by me. And I can't for the life of me think why. But occasionally it's occurred to me that they might get the sense that I can see through them and that they have something to hide. And that they are, in that sense, in the Islamic sense, kuffar. Kuffar. They're hiding secrets. They're hiding things from the light. Or they think they are. They think they're hiding things from God's sight. Or they think they are. That's what a kuffar is, to hide into the dirt, to hide your sin, inside, bury it. It's the Arabic etymological root is to bury into the earth. So the meaning of kuffar today is an infidel, somebody who denies that there is one indivisible God. We mustn't allow ourselves to be lazy and fall prey to easy polarization and to create simple dichotomies. Trauma sucks. It's all bad. Okay. How do you know anything? How do you know not to do stupid things? How do you know when something's going to work? Have you ever built something? A relationship, a business, a car? You've put like an old car back together, a house. The whole thing sucks. It is a layer upon layer of suck. Do training, bodybuilding, martial arts training. It sucks. It just hurts. You're just hurting yourself over and over and over again to build something. To build something. It's traumatic. My spiritual take on trauma would be to sort of say, let's try to take a meta view of the subject that we're talking about and hold back on the value judgments of trauma, of narcissistically abusive relationships. Yes, it hurts. Pain hurts. Pain always hurts. But maybe pain is the only thing that can wake you up. Maybe nothing else does. Maybe being gently chided or guided or taught slowly, patiently, carefully is just not going to do it. Maybe we are quite stubborn creatures and we've only ever learned by pain. Maybe that's the purpose of initiation rituals and initiation rites and scarification and even self-mutilation. It makes me laugh the way people venerate indigenous cultures and this awful first world patronizing way. Oh, they're so wise. They're so aligned with the earth. We, modern Western capitalists, we pollute everything. We're so evil. We're so awful. And they cherry pick. And they don't want to talk about the genocide, the mutilation, the rape, the incest, the systematic torture that goes on. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to say specific indigenous tribes. I just notice that sometimes we have a tendency, or some of us have a tendency, to reconstitute a story or an idea to fit a pre-existing narrative. That to me seems like poor philosophy. We should look carefully and take the whole thing on board. No, what do these people really believe? What are they really about? Do you think if you walked up to them back in the day with your crystals and your beads, that they wouldn't slow roast you over a fire like they slow roasted every person over a fire that they didn't understand to see what magic spirits came out of? I just wanted to end it on slow roasting over fire. So we're fixated with trauma. I said in a video a couple of weeks ago, there is a depravity in the trauma culture, which is that it keeps you backward looking. It keeps you focused on what didn't work and on what you didn't like. And that's fine to a degree, but there must be a boundary. It's not limitless. There is not limitless benefit in limitless vulnerability. There is not limitless benefit in limitless confessionals. Being vulnerable and confessing is very powerful, but not forever and not every day. You don't do terrible things every day. You shouldn't need to confess every day. And if you do need to confess every day, there's something wrong with you. We've taken bits and pieces, or some of us have taken bits and pieces, the stuff that resonates with our pre-existing subjective reality. Nietzsche would probably have it that it's biological. He said that our philosophies are biological. I don't know that that's true, but it's an interesting talking point. Like he really felt like whatever philosophy you came up with, it would ultimately be rooted in your body and your genetic type. Interesting idea. Vulnerability is not infinitely useful. Confessional is not infinitely useful. Talk therapy is not infinitely useful. Water is not infinitely useful. If you keep like drinking water up to a point, it's pretty healthy, stay hydrated. What can happen if you drink too much water? If you drink too much water, eventually you can start to get very, very sick. Moderation, and we have to move forward. The trauma and narcissism moment that we're in, that isn't going away, it seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. People are more and more fixated on trauma, more and more fixated on narcissism, more and more fixated on abuse. I'm thinking, how, we've never really, like, as a culture, been wealthier and had more options than we do now. Where's this fixation, like, coming from? Some people are genuinely traumatized. Some people are generally carries PTSD and genuinely carry CPTSD. But the number of people who've self-diagnosed as having these things versus those who actually do, I think is probably a little bit out of kilter. It's probably a little bit out of whack. I said to you a few weeks ago, there's depravity in trauma, which is it's degenerative. If you keep focusing on the past and what went wrong, some of it is necessary so that you don't do it again and you learn your lesson and you move forward. It's not so that you just endlessly look into what went wrong, keep gazing into the abyss and think that insight will magically come from there. There's no evidence of that. You have to find the lesson, make yourself safe again, repack your stuff, dust yourself down, and keep going. I say that not because like that's my moral philosophy of life. I say that because time keeps moving. I'm speaking from personal experience right now. I got caught in a moment. It lasted 2 years. 2 years. I'm adult enough to enjoy my independence and young enough to enjoy my health, really to a high level for maybe 40 years of life. I just lost 2. I've already spent 15. Anyway, this is not good. We got to move fast and move forward eventually.